esteemed Vice Chancellor who joined 4 days before in our university, and he has not yet settled, and he is having a very packed schedule, but still then he accepted our invitation, came here, and it's a kind of a great gesture. And I must tell you that he is a very simple, as far as I understand, he is a very simple and humble person. We have 2 eminent keynote speakers. First of all, I will welcome Professor Durgesh Nandini, who is the Professor of Public Administration at Indira Gandhi National Open University, Delhi. And I know that she has done a lot of work in this area. She is a well-known expert in the field, and she has published very large number of articles and books in this area. And I am sure her address will be very useful and very insightful for all of us, and she will definitely give a kind of direction to this seminar. And I, on behalf of the department, I welcome you, madam. I also welcome the other distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Rajendra Kumar Pandey, who is currently working as a professor and principal at the Deshbandhu College in the University of Delhi. He is also a very well-known expert in this area. He has number of books, number of research articles to his credit, having kind of a very good exposure and very good expertise in this area. We are fortunate to have you, sir, as our keynote speaker for this conference. On behalf of the organizers and on behalf of the department, I welcome you. And I also take this opportunity to welcome our esteemed Dean, Professor G. Chandrika, who is a very good person and also very good historian. So I also welcome the man of this event, Professor Parida. And also I welcome our research scholars and other research scholars, those who are really working very hard for the last several days. So I welcome them, and I also welcome each one of you here, and welcome to all of you. I am sure this 2 days deliberation will be very useful, and it will provide us some fruitful kind of insights to not only to strengthen our knowledge in the field, but also to have a kind of impact on the ongoing social discourse, ongoing discourse on the disaster studies and in sociology in general.
Esteemed Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry University, Professor P. Prakash Babu sir, keynote speakers for this session, Professor Durgesh Nandini, Professor Rajendra Kumar Pandey, Dean School of Social Science and International Study, Professor G. Chandrika, Professor B.B. Mohanty, Head of the Department, Professor C. Aruna, Senior Professors, Professor Krishnan, Professor Jaswiratnam, Professor Raju, Professor Binu Acharya, Professor Sharma, Professor Vishal, Professor Uman, scholars, participants, delegates, media person, and ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you. I, on behalf of the Department of Sociology, welcome all of you to this beautiful event. It gives me immense pleasure to deliver the scope of the conference titled Strengthening Governance in Disaster Risk Reduction, the Road Ahead for Viksit Bharat. As you know, Viksit Bharat has been a buzzword of late. And at present, so many institutions, so many organizations, in fact, whole country is, trying to celebrate this. In fact, we are going to make it as an initiative. So in that case, Viksit Bharat is nothing but an initiative. It's a revolution and it's a vision to take India into a developed nation by 2047. And this initiative seeks to mobilize across varieties of fields, especially economic, social, environmental, governance, so that we can make a sustainable development, so that we can make a comprehensive development by 2047. Now, if you see history witnesses that all countries got some kind of opportunity to develop their nation. Especially, you look at Western European countries, especially after Industrial Revolution, US, or some other countries, they had their own time and they developed during that particular time. And for us, it is Amrit Kal. It is a golden time to try to do our best for making our country into a developed country. But how come that possible? How do we make that possible? Developed nation or Viksit Bharat is not possible unless and until we see disaster risk reduction. Because out of 29 states and 8 union territories, if you see, 27 states are very, very prone to natural disaster. And we have so many people, those who are staying in village or urban area, they are much prone to natural disaster. So we cannot make it as a developed nation unless and until we see this larger number of population or how to reduce natural disaster. Because we cannot stop natural disaster. It is there. It was there with us. Since time immemorial, natural disaster has been with us. We cannot stop that. But how to reduce this? How to prevent this? That is the matter of discussion. And I have some data here. If you see from 1995 to 2020, more than 1.5 lakh people died. And there are 33% people, those who are already impacted by natural disaster. And therefore, it is very, very important for us to go to the depth and venture into this area to make our country into a developed one, or to go in the process of Viksit Bharat. So now let's try to go to the depth, and for that, when we talk about disaster risk reduction, how do we define disaster? What do you mean by disaster? Let me tell you that disaster happens when hazard agents interact with vulnerability. Hazard agents may be anything, like cyclone, like flood, earthquake, landslide, it may be anything. And although hazards take place everywhere, but there is a disproportionate impact. And in that case, discipline like sociology, social sciences, come forward to take as a major role. So we have already, understood there are varieties of discussion, there is a large, scholarly, discussion, and it is there already, and it says that disasters are viewed as events that occur within a specific historical context. So that historical context has its relation with political, economic, demographic, and environmental processes. Take, for example, Odisha super cyclone, or there was a earthquake in Haiti, 2010. That was only 7.0 Richter scale earthquake in Haiti, but more than 5 lakhs people died. Whereas you have an earthquake of 9.0 Richter scale in Japan, only 1,200 people died. And therefore, it is all about understanding disaster as well as disaster risk. While citing about Odisha super cyclone, same thing happened in Odisha super cyclone also, which happened in the year 1999. More than 15,000 people died. However, several larger impact, cyclone happened after that, but very few people died. The reason being, Odisha government successfully identified risk, or they defined what is a disaster. Now, what is the solution for this? How do we go ahead? There are larger, world bodies like Sendai Framework of Disaster Risk Reduction, and before that we had like Hugo Framework for Action, which we call HFA. HFA was from 2005 to 15 by United Nations, and 15 to 30 Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, again by United Nations. So Sendai Framework, gives 4 important priorities. And that's why this theme is very, very timely. Priority 1 talks about understanding disaster risk. Priority 2 talks about strengthening disaster governance. Priority 3 talks about investing in disaster risk reduction, and 4th talks about disaster preparedness. And therefore, what we understand is that unless and until we go into the depth, especially with regard to risk, it is very, very difficult to reduce disaster. Now, there are lots of scholars, those who have talked about risk. And in scholarly parlance, risk represents basically the potential for loss. It is a negative connotation. And let me put some examples. For example, in Bangladesh, 1970, there was a cyclone called Cyclone Bhola. 5 lakh people died, Cyclone Bhola. And in 1991, similar storm happened in Bangladesh again. That is called Cyclone Gorky. Again, more than 2 lakh people died. But Cyclone Sidr very recently happened. Only 1,000 people died. Cyclone Sidr is, larger impact. So the point I'm trying to tell you here is that it is all about understanding risk or risk society. There are so many sociological thinkers. I would like to, very quickly, I would like to, bring some of them here. We have a thinker called Ulrich Beck and Luckman. Both of them talked about risk society. And they say that this world is all about risk, especially when their book published in 1992. Very few people were there to recognize that book, but then afterwards, so many people recognized. So it's all about understanding risk, and they say that it is because of late modernity, because of industrialization, or because of, the kind of daily life we have or we are having. That is creating a risk. As a result, we are having so many other things. So natural hazards, they are just like the symptom. The root lies somewhere else. And we have another thinker, you know, like Peter Berger and Luckman, they also they also talk about social construction of risk. And in social construction of risk, they say how risk is constructed in our day-to-day life. We create risk. There is a meaning which is very much there, and therefore unless and until we just go into understand that meaning, it is very, very difficult to, go for the solution. And there are so many other, thinkers, like we have a thinker called Ben Wisner. He wrote a beautiful book in the year 1994. That book is called At Risk. And At Risk talks about a model. And that model is pressure and release model. Pressure and release model talks about how do we, understand risk. Then only it is possible to go for the solution. Like dynamic pressure, other pressures, other factors. So all those are very much given. Now let me come to the other part of our topic, that is governance. So governance is just like an umbrella under which all disaster mechanisms, rest. So unless and until we talk about governance in detail, and as Professor has already mentioned, governance is not the issue of politics only. It is very, very wide. It is the combination of several things. So in that sense, all social science, disciplines are very much, responsible to understand governance. Like what is the role of anthropology? What is the role of politics? Role of sociology? Role of psychology? What about mental strength? What about trauma? All those are very, very important when you try to, go for, reducing risk. So against this background, this conference, is designed so that we can discuss the pre-disaster socio-economic, political, cultural, legal, and institutional factors. And we can comprehend the importance of governance in DRR. I'm sure coming 2 days, participants, they'll in fact deliberate on all those issues. And we'll try to understand the role of national and sub-national factors, global factors, as well as what is the role of politicians, what is the role of other institutions, what about political actors, media, civil society. So many people are involved. And towards the end, I'm sure we'll also try to assess the importance of community-based and local level approaches that engage in disaster risk reduction. So with this, I'm sure the paper presenters, will deliberate on varieties of issues, with regard to DRR. And I'm sure it will be a very, very fruitful stay for them. And I once again, in fact, want to thank you, welcome you to this beautiful university. And let me also tell you that 2006, this university had a vice chancellor from HU. He changed the structure of this university. And again, we have a vice chancellor from HU. And I'm sure this university will see so many things, so many development. There is no doubt about that. I'm sure sir will bring HU culture or other good university culture to this university. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. And I thank you once again, everybody, including dear students, those who have worked day and night here, especially the team, everybody, thanks a lot and welcome to this national conference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for highlighting the importance of disaster preparedness with various disastrous events that has impacted in developed nation in comparison to developing nations like India. Thank you, sir, for outlining the significance of this conference also in addressing governance mechanism for disaster risk reduction.
It is now our honor to invite Professor G. Chandrika, Dean of the School of Social Sciences and International Studies at Pondicherry University and a professor in the Department of History. Professor Chandrika has been a distinguished faculty member in the Department of History at Pondicherry University since 1992. She has led significant research projects in promoting gender and development initiatives, and we are especially grateful to have her with us today. Without further ado, I invite Professor Chandrika to the stage to deliver the felicitation address. Ma'am, please.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Prakash Babu sir, and Professor Mohanty, my senior, Professor Durgesh Nandini, Department of Social Sciences, Indira Gandhi National University, Delhi, Professor Rajendra Kumar Pandey from Deshabandhu College. He is a professor and principal of the Deshabandhu College, and Dr. Pradeep Kumar Parida, Dr. M. Tirela, and the colleagues from the Sociology department, which department is organizing this very important seminar, officers, faculty colleagues from other disciplines, research scholars, students, a very good morning to one and all. I always believe that seminars of this kind are very important because they make us update our knowledge about the state of the art, and they also bring forth new research, and it is a very significant thing that this seminar is being conducted by the Sociology department and under the leadership of our Professor Parida. I congratulate the Sociology department for thinking of this very important topic for the seminar, and also this is an effort towards bringing out developed India, Viksit Bharat. And we know today we are having a very sunny and warm day, and we are enjoying the salubrious climate of the Bay of Bengal. This Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean, which have been named after India and a territory in India, are not always friendly. We all know that. The history tells us the number of storms and other natural calamities that we are getting from this stormy sea. And so these natural disasters are, on the one hand, cannot be avoided, but the suffering after the disasters can be mitigated, and our preparedness will make us face these natural calamities in a better manner. But on the other hand, we have some man-made disasters, and these can be avoided actually. And what human intervention can do during such calamities, natural calamities and disasters, man-made disasters, we have some example from history. In 1876-78, there was a great famine, and we know now better that it was caused by the El Nino oscillation. But it affected major territories in India, and India was at that point of time under the British control. And in the Madras Presidency, one of the regions to be affected worst by this famine, there was a debate between two persons. One was William Robert Cornish, who was the Surgeon General, and another was Richard Temple, who was the special envoy of the British government to deal with the famine situation. And the debate was that Richard Temple believed that 1 pound of grain is sufficient for distribution to people to keep the suffering less. But whereas Richard Cornish believed that it was not sufficient for maintaining good health. So he wanted a liberal rationing of food for those affected by famine. And those days we find this was a debate about ill health, how it can contribute to underdevelopment. But afterwards, now we have the famous theory of Amartya Sen, the entitlement approach to famine. And it tells us that not lack of scarcity of food, but it is the policy of government towards entitlement of food. That has actually changed, our perception has changed. So we find actually in the 1990s, the very aspect of governance came to be associated with the concept of development. And afterwards now the World Bank or the UNO are always talking about good governance and how it is very important for having a sustainable development and also for having the protection of human rights. Now I will read out to you a definition of good governance given by the United Nations Human Rights Commission.
Good governance relates to the political and institutional processes and outcomes that are necessary to achieve the goals of development. The true test of good governance is the degree to which it delivers on the promise of human rights, civil, cultural, economic, political, and social rights. So, this is the human rights approach to good governance, and we find this seminar is addressing rural development and many other issues that are related to the rights of humans and also development of humans. In that way, I think it's a big contribution to the field, and always as a faculty member of the School of Social Sciences, I stand to benefit by attending the seminars of the Sociology department. We all know that there is a healthy competition among the departments of social sciences to contribute to knowledge. But in 2011, I can never forget the seminar that was organized by our Professor Mohanty on farmer suicides in India. It was an eye-opener for me, and we were very much enthralled to hear our Sainath give a big speech, and even today it is available on the YouTube and you can listen to it. And we find 2018, our Professor Parida again conducted a seminar, and this is about natural disaster and women, gendered perspectives. It was published in the form of a book, and last year Professor Aruna conducted on health, sustainable development and other aspects, gender aspects, and I was also standing to benefit by attending all these seminars. So I really congratulate, felicitate the Department of Sociology, and from the other departments of School of Social Sciences, there will be vibrant seminars throughout the year, and I thank all of you for giving this opportunity. Thank you.
It is now time for the presidential address, a moment of great significance. For this, we are privileged to request our newly appointed Honorable Vice Chancellor of Pondicherry University, Professor P. Prakash Babu.
Respected dignitaries on the dais, Professor Mohanty, Professor Pradeep Kumar Parida, Professor Chandrika, Professor Durgesh Nandini, Professor Rajendra Kumar Pandey, Professor Aruna, head of the department sitting before me, and also Dr. Imtirinla. And the speakers invited, faculty members and the students. It's my great pleasure to stand before you, but I wanted to make one request to all the students. Please don't use your mobiles now. All are downing their heads and they are all into the mobiles. I have been seeing them. So this conference is, I think, organized only for you, not to us. Okay? So you stop using mobiles. I don't think you have that much assignments you have, right? It's a great pleasure for me to join here. As Professor Mohanty indicated, this is my 4th day, and this is my 2nd conference that I am attending. So morning at 9:30 I have attended one, now it's one. I have to go for another one, that's why I am skipping the line, so I'm sorry for that. So I congratulate the Department of Sociology for organizing a wonderful national conference on a very important theme, that is strengthening the governance in the disaster risk reduction. They wrote ahead for Viksit Bharat. See, these lines, one of the 2 words that attracted me, risk reduction. It's not that risk completion or avoid the risk, it's a risk reduction. So as my biodata indicated that I'm a biologist, biotechnology, I also do some research in the malaria parasite, which is actually endemic to some of the forest areas of Andhra Pradesh and Orissa, and also Northeast. So soon after the independence, we know that malaria is a very disastrous disease once we had, and people, even during the wars, the wars, while war is going on, initially all the kings and the soldiers, they come and stay in the forest area. They stay for 10 to 15 days or 1 month, They look at around the fort of the one which they are wanted to capture. They send some CBI people there at that time. So they have to go and investigate and see how they can enter into the kingdom. So by the time these people they come out with the information, all the soldiers must have died because of the malaria. So malaria used to dictate the war winners, not the war. So that was the dreadful disease. So in India also we are also having that one. So soon after the independence in the 1967, we have the, because of the science and technology development, we were having the DTT, which was really, we were able to control the insects, that is the mosquito. So then the government of India declared that we will eradicate malaria. So malaria eradication program they started in 1967. So after that, after 10 years, normally these diseases normally come up once in 10 years. So they really maintain a good cycle of around 10 years because they develop the resistance. Resistance, it requires some time. So after 1977, again it erupted. 87, again it erupted. So then the government of India, they changed, ICMR changed the title from Malaria Eradication Program to Malaria Control Program. So we realized that we cannot eradicate it. So the same way as my earlier speakers indicated that the disaster cannot be avoided. We are living in the place where we have to face the disasters. However, the Viksit Bharat 2047, to reach that goal, we have to really address this issue also. So I am really happy that the Department of Sociology, they have taken this as one of the thematic area to conduct these kind of conferences. As Professor Parida indicated, Sendai Declaration, I stayed near to Sendai actually. For 2 years I was there in Japan. So next to Sendai, we were having an Akita, there is another place. So Japan is a small place, it's a disaster prone. So once we were in the building, we were staying in the building of 11th floor or something. So one day building was actually making a small kind of movements. But they said, don't worry, it will not fall. They indicated to me, though the technology that they have developed such a way that they predicted this kind of earthquakes, and they made the buildings even 50 floors and 100 floors or so, just they swing, but they don't fall. So that is and also recently there was an accident in Japan. One flight caught the fire and nobody was injured. Nobody, all were evacuated within the time. So when the press reporters asked the people how you are able to do that without damage, they said, sir, they are all Japanese people. So they really follow the guidelines. If there is a rule, they follow in total. So government declares that from today onwards there is a summer, they change all the clothes, winter to summer. They change it, that is. So the rule binding. So even people, when we say some of the guidelines also, people should be in a position to follow it, government guidelines. So now with the disaster management addressing, so we should have the policies. So even 1977, still I remember there was a great floods in the Andhra Pradesh. It's called Uppena, they call it as. So I was a small boy when I was hearing so much of noise of the air and trees are falling and all. So at the Machilipatnam area where the tsunami has come, and the next day morning so many villages disappeared, that's all. Villages disappeared, you can imagine that. So then next on the 2004 recently, there was a very big cyclone from Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and up to this place, Cuddalore. So many lives were lost and so much of property. It caused around 11,000 crores of damage to the people and the properties. And so many lives are there. So now what you should do is one is to minimize that one. We have to use the technology. So all the people, those who are having this one, technology should be used so that we can minimize the damage. So we can alert the people. One thing is, because of the technology, we should build the constructions, it should not be damaged. Second thing, we should alert the people, those who are near in the coastal areas. And also we should evacuate them in time. And also if there is an earthquake, that we should have the buildings that their earthquake they should not, it should not affect the earthquake. So these are all technologies. So by 2047, we should really see that, see, in the Japan, whatever it happens, it will not affect much, very limited. So we should reach to the stage where to all the development countries, that the technology, we should have such a technology where we can, especially the Indian people, we should see the minimization of this damage. And what is the role of the sociology students especially? So all the academicians, so we should make a noise, that's all. We should make a noise, big noise and biggest noise, until the government and the people should listen to us. So that is the role of the academicians. So tell them once, twice, third time, fourth time, until they listen. And also the research publications and research areas, and also these such a kind of conferences or seminars and workshops will always enlighten the public. And the role of even the students also, when you are in the place where, like in Pondicherry, so you should have to have and adopt the villages where you should go to the public and tell them these are the places where you will get such a kind of prone for these disasters, and how they can minimize and all. So this is the role of the students. I think I wish that you people will have the projects actually. They will be having some kind of projects, they will take up the projects and all. So try to address the local issues, being a local of this particular place. So with these few words, I thank the authorities for inviting me.
Thank you so much, sir, for your visionary words and for guiding us in advancing research and policy dialogue on disaster governance. Thank you, sir, for enlightening us on how disastrous events during war times affects lives and how things have been eventually changing. Also, how technology needs to be judiciously used for betterment, incorporating disaster risk reduction.
We are privileged to have two eminent dignitaries delivering the keynote address today, who has made significant contributions to disaster studies and governance. It is our esteemed honor to invite Professor Durgesh Nandini, Madam, a distinguished scholar in the field of public administration.
Welcome, PUites. I know there are faculty members and students, researchers particularly, who are going to contribute in the area of disaster management. And this is my Karma Bhumi. I love this. Thank you very much, Professor Parida. He has given a very good background of disaster management. Like, anybody can understand it in a very simple way. What is disasters, how disasters are coming, how these are affecting, and how to manage disasters. Nowadays, we are talking about the disaster risk reduction. This is good strategy. Disasters were coming to India from the time of immemorial time, I must say from the Manu's period, from the Kautilya's period. At that time, we were aware that, okay, fire is disaster, flood is disaster, epidemics is disaster. Kautilya talked about all these things. But nowadays, we know there are so many types of disasters. And National Disaster Management Plan explains 17 types of disasters. We have observed a paradigm shift in the disaster management. Earlier we were talking about disaster management. Nowadays we are talking about disaster risk reduction and management. Management is definitely there, but now we are talking about disaster risk reduction and management. It shows more focus on risk reduction and management. And it's required. We are talking about governance. Do you think that governance is a new concept? No, in India we were contributing. Community was the first responder to disasters. They were managing disasters. Panchayati Raj institutions were there. And it's Western concept. We have started talking, it has become a buzzword. What are the requirements? Why we need governance? We need transparency in the system. We need responsibility. We need responsiveness. Once we were talking and we asked a political scientist, what do you mean? What are disasters? That person said, disasters. Ministries should be responsible, ministers should be responsible, and it should be done in a responsible manner. Then we discussed with the public administration person. He said administrators should take care. It is their responsibility. They are answerable for that. Okay, ministers are answerable for public, but administrators are answerable to political leaders. So administrators should work. After that, we discussed with a sociologist. He said, women, children, old age people, they are vulnerable in the community and their care is very important. Later on, next was in line a psychologist. We discussed with the psychologist. He said, disaster management, yes. After disasters, we have seen many people are affected, many people are taken to the hospitals, but there are certain people who are much affected, their health is affected, so we have to take care of health. So what it states that it is a multidisciplinary approach. It's a multidisciplinary action. Action is required. We need joint efforts to manage disaster, particularly for disaster risk reduction. Earlier, our focus was on response, relief, and rehabilitation. Like there are many phases in the disasters. If we talk about disaster management cycle, definitely there are 3 phases: before disaster, during disaster, and after disaster. Before disaster, preparedness is very important. During disaster, response is very important. And in the post-disaster stage, rehabilitation and recovery is very important. Our budget, our finances were going towards response, relief, and rehabilitation. But nowadays, focus is on disaster risk reduction. So definitely we are improving. As your Vice Chancellor has given different cases and discussed about the case studies, I will also say this thing. Of course, super cyclone was there. It affected a lot. After that, 2001 Bhuj earthquake was there. It affected a lot. But in Bhuj, if you will see, there was drastic change, improvement. They settled that area. They developed that area. Now, if you will go and see, you will find development over there. So there is a debate. Disasters are affecting or disasters are helping in development. What do you say? Hello? Disasters are affecting or disasters contributing in the development? Like if you say the case study of Bhuj, definitely you will say it contributed towards development. But it affects the daily life of people. It affected the livelihood. It affected their thinking, their process. So definitely we have to protect people. We have to save people from disasters. And we have to work for development. After 2001 Bhuj earthquake, government took it very seriously to work for disaster management. Then there was a committee, high-level committee on disaster management. This committee considered various important aspects and gave this explanation that Disaster Management Act is required. So Disaster Management Act was enacted, and after that, 2009, we have observed a major change. There was implementation of disaster management policy. And after this policy, how to implement it? Policy was there, but implementation was not proper. So to implement this policy, we prepared a disaster management plan in 2016. Again, this was not sufficient. Then we revised this plan in 2019. New plan came, that is National Disaster Management Plan 2019. Earlier in 2016, there were 10 chapters. Now there are 14 chapters. So these type of changes are there. As sociologist says that yes, inclusiveness should be there. So women empowerment, we have focused on empowering women, creating awareness, creating groups of women and elderly particularly to create awareness and contribute in disaster management. Because we all know very well that our country, even our houses, everything depends upon the 50% population that belongs to women. If women is not there, then definitely these all talks about strengthening governance will not be successful. If we want success, we all have to contribute towards this, particularly in the area of disaster risk reduction and management. When we talk about governance, what is governance? This is contribution of government. This is contribution of administrators, contribution of industries, contribution of media, contribution of civil society organizations, and contribution of citizens, which is very important. In this particular area, we have completed 2 projects. One project was with National Disaster Management Authority, and this was very successful project. Earlier we visited Bihar and many more states, Northeast also, and we have observed there was a place where they said droughts are coming, floods are coming, and we were totally surprised when floods are there, how they are being affected by droughts. It's not possible. We explained them how they can improve the system, how they can conserve water, use that water, which is affecting them during floods. So they started that practice. We developed the training programs, TOTs. These programs were very successful, and after that we have observed the difference. In Odisha we worked a lot, and you have observed the changes during cyclones. Now minimum effect, because alert is very good. They in advance alert with the help of technology, which is very successful. And everybody is giving this example. Even foreign reports of UNDP, you will find example of Odisha. Similarly, we have observed changes in Bihar. So these changes in the area of disaster management have brought massive change, and now we are moving towards development. As we have given you the reference that there is Disaster Management Act, there is National Disaster Management Policy, and National Disaster Management Plan. So on the basis of that, now we are working for the development, as we have to achieve the objectives of Sustainable Development Goals. For that particular purpose, we need contribution and joint efforts of political leaders, administrators, industrialists, media, and citizens. We all have to work together for this cause, so that sabka saath, sabka vikas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed a multidisciplinary action is required for disaster risk reduction. Madam's thought-provoking questions, disasters are affecting or helping, is indeed worth wondering upon. Thank you again, ma'am, for the enriching insights on disaster governance and disaster risk reduction strategies and enlightening keynote address.
So now we are privileged to have Professor Rajendra Kumar Pandey, who currently serves as a professor and principal at Deshbandhu College at the University of Delhi, to deliver the second keynote address. Professor Pandey, with a distinguished career in academia, has been instrumental in advancing research and education in disaster management and public policy. His areas of expertise include governance frameworks, disaster preparedness, and integration of disaster risk reduction into sustainable development goals, with a particular focus on disaster management and human rights. We are privileged to have Professor Pandey with us today. So we would request Professor Pandey to address the gathering. Sir, please.
The people who are not presently on the dais, but over a few minutes back, Professor P. Prakash Babu, the distinguished Vice Chancellor of this university, Professor Chandrika Ma'am, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor B.B. Mohanty sir, very senior distinguished faculty of the Social Science faculty here, Professor Durgesh Nandini Madam, Professor Parida Sahab, Professor C. Aruna Madam, Professor Imtirendra Longkumar Ma'am, my friend Professor Sanjay Sharma ji, Professor Vishal Jadhav ji, Professor Girish Kumar, who has come from a long way from Chandigarh, Punjab, my dear friends, dear students, researchers, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, when we talk about disaster management per se, and Professor Parda has changed this to disaster risk reduction, then we are always reminded of the various phases of life that we have been experiencing since the time we are born, and even before that we have been reading. Professor Chandrika talked about the historical events of famines when we used to be seeing them, when a lot of people used to get died only due to lack of food for them. Professor Prakash Babu mentioned about the Andhra cyclone 1977, when the entire ecosystem of that area was wiped out due to that massive cyclone. But we are not seeing all these things today. Like Professor Parida gave a comparative study of the cyclones in Orissa itself. There was a time when cyclones, or you talked also about Bangladesh, cyclones used to come and kill millions of people in Bangladesh, in Orissa, in everywhere. But now, when they come, very few people get killed. The number goes to 1,000 in Bangladesh because of their peculiar social economic conditions, not because of the devastativeness of the disasters. And that brings us to the point that what have we been doing, how much have we traveled, and what's the road ahead for Viksit Bharat in terms of disaster risk reduction. The topic I'm going to speak today for a few minutes time, I'll speak. They have given me time of 20 minutes. I'll try to wind up my discussion in that minutes only. Is that when we seek to strengthen governance for disaster risk reduction, DRR in brief we say, what should have been doing throughout these years, what have been done previously, and what's the road ahead. And that way, what I'm going to speak before you right now is the trajectory through which India has been just dealing with the idea of disaster management, and DRR, which has become the buzzword now. Friends, many people talked about the historical events currently here at this stage, but when we talk about disaster per se as an idea, Professor Parda defined disasters, then what does risk means, many things. But how many people would have heard this term disaster before independence? Very few, very few. Famines were there, droughts were there, floods were there, everything was there. Only disaster was not there. Why? Because that phase in the terminology of disaster management was the phase of oblivion. People are simply oblivious of the term what we know today as disaster. In fact, he didn't mention that in the previous times, when somebody tried to define disaster term, they considered it as an act of God. And when something becomes act of God, the human beings simply tend to desist from commenting on that, evaluating that, assessing that, and just they bear with that one. The same was the logic during the colonial times and even after that. That India was one of the, and has been, continues to be, one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. But what did we do about disaster management? Nothing. Like Chandrika ma'am told us about the famines. Famine, why was famine in focus at that time? The focusing on famine doesn't mean that there was no flood, there was no drought, there was no earthquake, there was no avalanches. Everything was there. Famine was a long-standing event which started in the month of, say, April and continued till the month of August. These long months of that span of time made people's life miserable. If you read Sharat Chandra Chattopadhyay's stories, novels of colonial Bengal dealing with famines, you would be horrified. You would be scared of the situation people suffered from at that time. And therefore, in all the discussions, writings, reports, famine was considered as something untoward event and not other kinds of disasters. That situation changed in the country after independence. After independence, we were experiencing floods. Like if you see, famine was focused in colonial times of the Bengal famine only, though Professor Babu talked about also famine in Madras Presidency man told about. But only famines of Bengal were discussed at that time. Why? Because Bengal was the epicenter of the British rule. and all kinds of happenings, mishappenings of that time were reported very vigorously in the press, in media, in London, in British power centers, and therefore that became very burning issue of the time. But after independence, when India became a democratic country, and the focus of not only Bengal, but all other activities, events took center stage. So Assam also came on the center stage of the country's development strategy, which was very prone to floods. Bihar, we know Bihar is very flood prone state. The entire northern Bihar reels under waters in the monsoon months. So these states also came to take center stage. Rajasthan, we know, is a drought prone area in the country. But still, the post-independent government in the country was so much engrossed with the basic issues of life. We used to clothe our people. We used to feed them. We used to create some important infrastructure in the country to provide for rapid industrial development. So we entered the second phase of disaster management in the country, which I have termed as the phase of indifference. First was the phase of oblivion, when people were simply oblivious. They were unknown to the things what we are calling today as disaster. Though everything was there. As I told you that every natural activity, every man-made accident were there. But people are not knowing that they are something which we can rectify, which we can prevent, which we can mitigate, and which we can deal with. Nobody was aware of all those things. But after independence, when this wisdom dawned on the policymakers, but their hands were tied. Many of you might have heard that India entered the PL-70 agreement with the US at that time to import wheat. I think those were my childhood days. That wheat which came from US were just red and rotten wheat, whose chapatis once made were like uneatable, not worthy of being eaten. The wheat we use in present times, white chapatis we eat. Though we used to be rice eaters, even today we are rice eaters, even North India also. But wheat is also, chapati is also important in Northern Indian diet. When at my place I used to get that red chapati, I simply refused to eat them. And therefore at that time the government priorities was to augment food grain production in the country so that we can feed our people. So the disaster activities remain out of the focus, and therefore the second phase of indifference remained just centered on avoiding disasters, not talking about them. Talk about disaster only in terms of floods, only in terms of droughts, and how that should also be. You just factor the river water distribution, the rain-fed areas in the country only in terms of augmenting food grain production. So if you want to increase food production of paddy, production of wheat in Assam, say in Andhra Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu, wheat production in Punjab, Haryana, then see that how the river waters can be used there. Not what we know to the command area development. Nothing was that. Flood prone areas, nothing was that one. So this second stage of indifference was a stage where the government was in the know of the disastrous dynamics, their cause of their occurrence, their reach, their impact, their devastations, they just wreaked on the people. But the government was unable. People were totally sitting idle, just bearing the brunt of the disasters, praying God for or any kind of help to them, and the government's hands were tied. And therefore, till fourth five-year plan, as you know that five-year plans were the basic vehicle of development in the country, till fourth five-year plan, there was not a single use of the term disaster in any of the lexicons of governmental development plans and policies. Interestingly, the Constitution of India, when it was being drafted, all issues were discussed. Everybody tried to, in the Constituent Assembly debate, bring one issue or the other, the issue of language, the issue of region, the issue of caste, the issue of generation, everything was discussed, but not disaster. Water only mentioned at some places, that how can we use water, interstate river waters and something more, but nothing about disaster. Why? Because just remember, I use the term, the phase of oblivion. Nobody was aware that there is something called disaster, which shatters our life and which needs to be dealt with elaborately in the law of the land. Had there been some reference in the constitution about disasters, then we would not have been suffering the lack of idea and wisdom on this issue that we remained till 1990s. So the whole discourse of planning commission, planned economic development and other strategies, just they divided disasters, but disasters kept on recurring in the country. All of you mentioned one or the other disaster. Famine, you refer to. Cyclones, he referred to. Many things, Nandini Madam referred to. Even Babu Sahab himself was victim of that 77 Andhra cyclone. He found the villages who are wiped out. So those phase of indifference in India were not acceptable to rest of the world. And this is the reason that when in other parts of the world disasters were taking place, millions of people used to die in these disasters. So in the 1990s, the decade of 90s, 1990 till 1999, this 10 years of span was declared by UN General Assembly as IDNDR. What is IDNDR? International Decade for Natural Disasters Reduction. I in international, D disaster decade, D decade, international decade for NDR, natural disaster reduction. That decade, declaration of the decade of 90s as IDNDR became the turning point in what we have reached today as DRR. Two important things happened. One is that the entire UN system was oriented towards mainstreaming disaster management in their activities, in their thinking, in their discourses, and in their terminologies. Like we are discussing to about governance. Ma'am defined good governance. How can we define good governance? She banged upon the UNHRC report. Why? Because human rights was mentioned by UN, so all UN agencies, they defined human rights. What's human rights? So this, that. Same thing happened with disaster management also. Same thing happened with disaster management also. When IDNDR was declared, UNDP, UNEP, UN General Assembly, UNESCO, UNICEF, everybody. UNICEF will deal with disasters vis-a-vis children. UNESCO will deal with disaster vis-a-vis social and culture, UNDP development, everything. And India being one of the staunch believers and followers of UN, could not resist the temptation of working in tandem with the UN flow. So India was forced, was dragged, was compelled to start discussion about disaster management, to bring about the ideas of disaster risk reduction, disaster management in its discourses, policy frameworks, in its strategies, plans. We used to have all kinds of strategies, but we were simply unaware of the term disaster, and therefore we were not dealing with them directly. Like I gave the example that we did try to deal with floods in Bihar and Assam, in UP and many places. Coastal Andhra also, Tamil Nadu, everywhere. We try to deal with floods, but we try to deal with floods only as much as that impacted food grain production in the country. Because our focus was on augmenting food grain production, not on mitigating impact of disaster on the people's life. But IDNDR tried to, or compelled the government of India to take disaster management as an independent activity, not linked to, not associated with, and not attached to any other policy perspective. The rest of the story, Madam Nandini told us that government set up one high-powered committee, that what should we do? Because in the country, we were simply unaware of the directions, of the ways, of the perspectives, frameworks where we can move ahead in the area of disaster management. First thing government did was to set up a high-powered committee. And that high-powered committee setting up ushers in the third phase of the disaster management discourse in the country, which we can say as the phase of initiation of disaster management as a subject, as a discipline, as an activity. Before that, we were simply knowing about disaster, no need for management. Management was added with this disaster term, suffix, only in the decade of 90s, IDNDR, and the beginning was made with the creation of high-powered committee, and on its recommendation, the creation of NCDM, National Center for Disaster Management. I remember it was set up in IIPA in Delhi, Indian Institute of Public Administration. That was the first body that was set up in this domain to deal with the issues of disaster management. I have authored book on this one, and in that book I have especially mentioned Professor Vinod Kumar Sharma, who is pioneer of disaster management in the country, though he was professor of ecology at IIPA. He was professor of environmental management, but he took up the cudgels on behalf of the government of India. He set up that center, and he for the first time published a book from IIPA on disaster management. So the decade of 90s was a decade of hectic activity in the country in the domain of disaster management. Committees were formed, institutions were created, various perspectives were drawn. In the meanwhile, the event was very active. Like you talked about Sendai framework. Before that, there was a Hugo framework from Japan. From Japan, we got Hugo framework. Even before that, we used to be the UN conference, Rio conference of Brazil. All these conferences, they dealt with the idea of disaster management. But in India, we were in a sleeping mode. We were only responding to the stimulus. We were not at all active. We were not at all full of creativity to deal with the onslaughts of disasters. So this phase of initiation, policies, committees, centers came to a logical conclusion in 2005, when Madam mentioned, when for the first time a definite framework of disaster management in the country was evolved with the passage of Disaster Management Act by the Parliament. That Act is now the Bible of disaster management in India. That Act defined the institutional framework, their functions, their powers, finances, people, processes, places, everything was defined in that Act. What we missed, the train, in 1946 to 49 in terms of constitution making process, we tried to rectify that and come on the track with the passage of that act in 2005. Friends, after 2005 onwards is the phase of what Professor Parda has mentioned here, is the phase of governance of disaster management. I'm not using the word DRR, disaster risk reduction, because for almost 50 years, DRR was not in existence. It was disaster management. DRR became very recent intervention by UN after Sendai framework, that they thought that disaster management is a broader area, includes so many things. So let's focus on only disaster risk reduction. We have created, like Madam Nandini said, we have created the NIDM, National Institute of Disaster Management. We have NDMA at the national level. In the states, we have SDMA, State Disaster Management Authorities. Then at the district level, we have DDM. We have all the structures. We have all the financial framework. Finance commissions have been at the forefront of recommending all these kind of allocations and devolutions. But still, when we carry out the assessment of these initiatives, where we come to the conclusion is that India still remains the country shattered by disasters broadly. If we leave apart some of the examples like Orissa has done wonderfully, they've created in the tenure of Navin Patnaik ji. That state has done wonderfully. They have now set up very wide, elaborate, early warning system. They have built up shelter houses. Their evacuation plan is very effective, like Professor Babu was saying about Japanese people. But in other parts of the country, this is not the system. I finished one study on flood management in Assam. The title of that study was Political Economy of Disaster Management in India. That what's the political economy? Like you people mentioned, somebody mentioned about P. Sainath's lecture here in some of the conferences. What Sainath has said is in fact the political economy of disaster management. And his basic argument is that disasters might be bad for common people, but they are not bad for all. So for whom are they good? They are good for the politicians, for the bureaucrats, for the middlemen, for the contractors, and for the petty politicians, the panchayat leaders, sarpanch, pradhans, and them. And the same study I conducted in 2 districts of Assam, Jorhat and Dibrugarh. I asked them that you have been living with floods since so many ages. Why have you not been able to evolve some plausible mechanism, some plausible system? Like Japanese have evolved about earthquake because they are so much prone to earthquake. And the response was that we have been giving our ideas, suggestions, points of view to the politicians and bureaucrats, but they are not listening to us. They want that let flood come every year to Assam, let them manage it. And by its management, let them get them well. So they get them well through this disaster management system. And therefore, my argument here, which I shall elaborate later, if Professor Parida is going to publish some work on this one, is that now we must transform the paradigm of disaster risk management in the country from governance dominant to community dominant. Let people be the bearer of disaster risk reduction strategies, mechanisms, measures, and efforts. Till now, the disaster reduction strategy in the country is government dominant. Government instructs, government directs, government gives, government offers, and people are just passive recipients of all these things. From the day when they were simply oblivious of what is disaster, till the day when they are finding that disaster is being managed by the people who have not at all any concern for their well-being. This situation needs to be changed radically. We need a paradigm shift in the entire discourse of disaster management, and that shift must be from government-driven disaster management to community-based disaster management efforts. Though some kind of discussions are around on this theme, but these discussions are only in very early stage. Some people are trying to deviate from them. Village-level disaster management strategies are advanced by many UN agencies, but in India we are desisting from them. We are refusing to accept them. But the panacea for this ill lies there only. Until and unless the victims, the vulnerable communities, women, like Professor Nandini said, the women, the disadvantaged groups, unless they take up the cudgels for managing their disaster risk strategies well, let them suggest to government, please provide us these logistics. These people will manage our own. Until and unless we are able to sideline what we call, I shall not use any negative term for them, the conventional disaster managers, we would not be able to achieve in India the loftier goal of disaster risk reduction. So if we want to have Viksit Bharat in 2047 with least number of casualties due to disasters. Like we all of us agree that disasters are unavoidable. But we can live with disasters. And we can live with disasters by setting a task for ourselves that let flood come and go, life will not be lost. Few fields will be damaged, that we can manage. Losing life is the biggest casualty, is the biggest impact of disasters. Once we set up that target for ourselves, only then the idea of Viksit Bharat can be fructified, can be meaningful, and can change the lives of people for whom this is designed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for taking us through the historical lens of disastrous events all over India. People transitioning from the phase of oblivion to the phase of indifference. Also, thank you for imparting us with the ideas on International Decade of Disaster Reduction, disaster management, and so much more. Thank you, sir. As we now come to the conclusion of the inaugural session, it is important to express our heartfelt gratitude to everyone who contributed to today's success. To do so, I would like to invite Dr. Imtirendla Longkumar, an associate professor in the Department of Sociology at Pondicherry University, to deliver the vote of thanks. Ma'am, kindly please.
A very good afternoon. It is now my pleasure to acknowledge and thank all those who have made this program a very big success, this inaugural program a very big success. To thank first and foremost in absentia our Professor P. Prakash Babu, Vice Chancellor, Pondicherry University. Like Sir had mentioned that he has just joined the university, but he is, making time to come and, be part of these programs. And I was also very humbled and impressed to see, the kind of in-depth information that he also have from a biologist, a biotechnologist, and, to have all these ideas as well. So I, really like to thank him in absentia. Moving forward, I want to thank the two keynote speakers for today. In times of webinars and in times of our just media, just virtual presence, you had made the time to come travel all the way from Delhi to from top north to down south, and this shows that you really have the topic is very close to your heart, and that you really wanted to be present here. So we really acknowledge that effort that you have taken to be here. So Professor Durgesh Nandini of the Department of Social Sciences, IGNOU, New Delhi, for the very thought-provoking presentation that you gave on this very pertinent topic that we have today. I also like to thank Professor Rajendra Kumar Pandey, who is a professor and principal of Deshbandhu College, Delhi University. I would also like to thank our head, Professor C. Aruna, for yes, she has not been keeping well. We all know that it's been many days now that she's not keeping well also. But she was there behind the scenes trying to make this program a huge success, and given all her health concerns also, she was able to come and be part of this program. We're really thankful to Madam. Yes. I also want to thank the media team for the entire coverage today, because like we said, some had mentioned that that conference, that speech is still there in YouTube. So this is what is required to to also locate it in the media. So thank you so much for the technical coverage from the media team. This program would not be seeing this light of the day today without the convener of the program, right? And on a very pertinent theme today, which is, which affects almost all parts of the world. And again, like, the university location as well, where, we also have a lot of cyclones affecting us. We also have, floods, etc. So it's very pertinent that Sir had brought this, seminar to the department, to the school, to the university, and also strengthening our, presence in the academia. So thank you so much. Sir has put in his heart and soul into, making this program a success.